The first loss of the season was bound to happen at some point. Totally get that. But not like this.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. Thanks so much for being here with us today as we start another week on Monday, December 22nd, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. And on today's show, we got to unpack the first loss of the season for Duke basketball as the Blue Devils fall by 1 point to the hands of the Texas Tech Red Raiders from Madison Square Garden. Duke had a 17-point lead in the second half, and it evaporated. Texas Tech wins the basketball game. We'll unpack it all here on today's show with our friend Hugh Straine from Ball Durham. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Take a moment, if you will, and watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Like this video, share it with your friends as we continue to grow the word in the audience here about Locked On Blue Devils. Appreciate everybody's support being a part of the journey with us. So without further ado, let's bring in our good pal Hugh Straine into the fold. Hugh, I hope you're doing well. Hope you had a relatively okay weekend, outcome aside from the Duke basketball game, my friend.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. It was a fantastic game to watch, but I'll tell you that second half, probably make me going bald a little earlier than I expected. It's been a stressful 20 minutes of basketball.
No kidding. And I mean, look, as I said in the open, I teased it, the first loss of the year was bound to happen at some point. The schedule was put together. It was a gauntlet for Duke in the non-conference, but just not like this, man. The 17-point lead that Duke had faded away. It's the first blown 17-point plus lead for the Blue Devils since 2007. Nearly 20 years since something like this took place. And it just, I don't know, for whatever reason, I was watching the game with some friends, and as soon as they were up, early in the second half, I just said, I don't think this is over yet. Something doesn't feel right here. And what do you know it? Texas Tech made a mad dash towards the end, despite so many players fouling out and all the troubles that they might have had. Duke drops this one.
Yeah, and I was kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum with you, JJ. It's not like they were up 17, early. They were actually kicked in the teeth early, but we were nearing the midway point of the second half where Duke generated that 17-point lead, and you said, I don't think it's over. J.T. Toppin picked up his fourth, and I was like, all right, this one's over. They have 6 guys playing with the injuries already. They have so much in foul trouble. I thought Duke was going to pull this out by maybe 20 points or more, but a fantastic second half surge from Texas Tech, but a game that Duke had absolutely no business losing. Obviously, losses are going to come in college basketball, and for elite teams, they're necessary for the team to reach its peak when it matters. But a really difficult way for Scheyer and co to pick up their first loss of the season in a game that Duke had absolutely no business losing. Felt pretty reminiscent, I thought, of the Final Four loss a year ago to Houston. Everything goes their way out of nowhere. Just a complete and utter collapse.
Yeah, the rug was ripped out right from under your feet if you're Duke. Looking at this one in particular, you mentioned that early start for Texas Tech. They led 9-0, and then Duke was able to close the half on a big run, scored 46 points in the first half, despite finding themselves in that 9-point early deficit. And I thought the offense was really in a rhythm and going. I thought the bench contributions that Duke got in a game like this were really impressive. Sarr was knocking down shots from the outside. Definitely want to give him some love. But it's just interesting when you look at we'll just talk about that offense in the first half. 46 total points, a good thing.
Yeah, Duke shot 7 of 14 from 3 in that first half alone. That was really what generated that lead. Texas Tech made it difficult to get anything going in the paint early on. Duke relied on that outside shooting. Nik Khamenia with some good minutes. Sarr, like you mentioned. And then Caden Boozer with some nice minutes off the bench in the second half specifically, but also in that first half. It was the outside shooting and, the stellar defense that we're accustomed with this Duke team to seeing that really kept them in at 46-36 lead at the halftime break, going in the locker room in a Duke favored arena. Felt like all the momentum was heading their way. Caleb Foster was pretty quiet. Isaiah Evans was scoreless in the first half, and they still generated 46 points and had a 10-point lead over a solid, not elite, but solid defensive team in Texas Tech. And it just felt like if a few things could have been picked up on the offensive side of the ball, that this game was, going to be handily in Duke's favor. Obviously, that was not the case.
Yeah, to state the obvious, I mean, only one person can score each time down the floor for Duke. So if you're getting a ton of bench points, then you're clearly not getting something from the starters. And oftentimes it works out that way. But the caveat here with this one was you've got this Duke team that had such great production off the bench. But you just mentioned it. Isaiah Evans really didn't have a notable game whatsoever. Made a couple of big buckets late for Duke that kind of felt like, okay, now he'll get going and get into a rhythm. That just didn't happen. Patrick Gongba was almost a non-factor offensively. Got called for the hook and hold on a flagrant that, and almost had a second one called against him as well. So certainly something that he's got to be careful with for sure moving into these big games. But yeah, that's the one thing is that if your bench is playing so well, does that mean the starters are struggling, or what does this exactly mean? Like, how do you – it's just such a juggle, man, to make sure everybody's on the right spot.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm watching early in the second half, and I keep telling myself something's wrong, but Duke's still up 15 points, and it just feels like there's something going wrong, but you can't really tell what it is. Gungba had a pretty difficult matchup with Toppin down on him down low when he was. Gungba's been great this year, so I don't think it's much of a scare, but you just need more consistency from Isaiah Evans. It's one thing if he's taken 8 shots from 3 and he's inconsistent, but scoreless first halves against ranked teams on neutral floors just can't happen. If Duke's going to be an elite team and make a deep run in March, you just need more out of him. The bench has been a good plus over these last few games, but Isaiah Evans came into this year regarded as one of the top breakout candidates on a national scale, and it hasn't really been disappointing. The efficiency issues have been a problem, but he still made some big-time plays. But it's been so inconsistent to the point where it's becoming more of a concern as the season goes on, because now we're just about through Duke's gauntlet of a non-con slate. They've got a game against Michigan in D.C. in February, but there's been several games where Isaiah Evans just has not been there. He was 0 of 7 for 3 against Florida before he hit that dagger to win the game, and he's just been very inefficient, very inconsistent. And last night, what was different about it is that he wasn't even taking shots. It's one thing if he's taking shots and he's inefficient, because you know how talented and confident of a shooter he is, that's going to come. They can't have him not taking shots. He has to be involved with the offense. He has to have the ball in his hands, and he has to be making plays for himself in addition to others. And, it's less of a concern over the beginning of the non-conference slate because he was taking shots. But if the volume's not there, that's an even bigger concern, in my opinion.
Yeah, you got to figure that out because, look, offensively for this one, Isaiah Evans and Pat Gongba were non-factors for Duke. We've talked about getting a larger volume of shot attempts from Big Pat throughout the season. He only goes 1 for 1 from the floor. But what kind of a world are we living in where Isaiah Evans plays 30 minutes of basketball and has just 4 shot attempts? Typically, it's like, dude, don't shoot as much. But this is a guy that only shot the ball 4 times in 30 minutes.
Yeah, before last night, he hadn't taken less than 8 shots in any game this season. And Texas Tech's not elite enough defensively to use the excuse that he was taken out of the game by whoever it was. They had 6 guys who were healthy. There's no reason why he shouldn't be getting up a high volume of shots. And that's the role he's in this year. He's in the role where he needs the ball in his hands a lot. He's the number 2 scorer behind Cam Boozer. Boozer still had his way, but it was not as dominant of an outing, I'd say, as we're accustomed to seeing from him. And if you're Isaiah Evans, the bench and the role players around those two being Boozer and Evans, picked up the slack. But you just need more out of Isaiah Evans. And against, a top 30 KenPom defensive team, but not an elite defensive team. Duke's played much better defensive teams this season. You can't have a day where Isaiah Evans is taking 4 shots on a neutral floor and expect to win the game when free throws aren't being knocked down. You just need more out of him. He brings it on the defensive side of the ball. He constantly brings the energy, but you need him to shoot the ball. You've got to have that scoring burst outside of Cam Boozer. You don't necessarily need him to be a 15 to 17 point per game scorer with the help, but you need him to put the volume up because he's got to be a threat offensively every single game, and he's got to be a headache for defenses to think about game in and game out. He just has to be more consistent. Yeah,
taking a look at this one again, Duke loses 82-81. We dive more into the box score in just a moment when Locked On Blue Devils get set to continue here on this Monday. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There is nothing like the opportunity to watch college sporting events And Game Time can give you that opportunity. From tailgates, packed stadiums, being right in the mix, you want to be there. The energy, the bands, the moments that you'll remember forever. But actually getting tickets, the part used to be frustrating with long waiting queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. It doesn't have to be that way. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I'm able to open the Game Time app and see all the various games that are available to watch now. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, thanks so much for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and your first watch here today. Thank you also for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Also take an opportunity to go check out us each and every day by joining our Locked On Everydayer Club. You can go and check out the show notes link down below, and the link will take you to find out more information about how you could be a part of the Everydayer Club. Be sure to join us here with the Locked On Podcast Network. Hugh Straine's hanging out with me today. He's from Ball Durham. We're talking about the Duke basketball defeat over or against Texas Tech. As Duke falls 82-81. Later today, we'll see how far Duke falls in the AP poll, as Duke was the #3 team in the country. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But now a long break until Duke plays again. And I don't know, man, something you just got to sit with this feeling a little bit through the holidays, which I know has got to be a little bit frustrating for the guys. If it's frustrating for you and I know that everybody in that locker room is feeling it as well.
Yeah, I think, what's most frustrating for, we say us, but obviously Coach Scheyer, the rest of the staff and the team, is the fact that Duke was in control the entire way and controlled its own destiny to the full extent. There really was no reason that Duke should have lost that game, especially when Toppin picked up the fourth foul. Even with the, Texas Tech went on a 20-6 run and Duke still held a somewhat comfortable lead. It just came down to the free throws. Duke shot over 50% from the field. The defense wasn't fantastic in the second half. Duke let Texas Tech shoot 62% in the second half, but a lot of that was Christian Anderson. I thought Duke did fine on the glass. I thought they did fine offensively, and they kept themselves in a position to win. But the free throws were just so it was unbelievable. Just the inconsistencies, missing front ends, and just not converting. And in my opinion, that was not only the biggest reason, but I think you could say it's the sole reason Duke lost that game. They lost by 1 point. They missed 12 free throws. And, you look at the other ends of the box score, sure, you could have used more from Isaiah Evans, but the bench scoring was there. I think you could argue it's really the free throws that got it done.
Yeah, brother, you mentioned box score. So we've got it up on the screen as we do after every single loss here. When you're watching Locked On Blue Devils on YouTube, and free throws is for sure something we've already been talking about this season. Like at some point, I was even, when Duke had the double-digit lead, I was saying to myself, these missed free throws will cost Duke at some point this season. Little did I know it would end up costing Duke that very same game as Texas Tech started to come back. But 17 of 29 from the free throw line for Duke. I mean, Cam Boozer missed 5. It was one of his worst shooting performances from the free throw line. Caleb Foster missed a pair. Isaiah Evans missed 1. Gongba missed 3. Caden Boozer missed 1. I mean, it's so many people here contributed to those misses at the free throw line.
Yeah, Duke is now down to 227th at Ken Pom in team free throw shooting percentage
out of 365.
At 365, so way down there. When you look at the matchups against high major teams, the free throw shooting should be a major advantage, but it's just not. Duke was plus 12 in free throw attempts against Texas Tech last night, just plus 6 in makes. In their 6 high major conference games this season, they're plus 54 in free throw attempts, but just plus 29 in makes, leaving so many points on the board at the charity stripe, shot under 66% from the free throw line in their 6 high major games combined. It's turning into a weakness with what should be a strength, and that sheer volume is becoming a major disadvantage because now it's leaving teams with the option to send them to the line because there's just such a lack of consistency. You can almost bank on Duke shooting 60-65% from the line and really not being able to ice games from the charity stripes. It's something that, it's hard to say how do you fix it besides just taking free throws at practice, taking a couple hundred a day and making them. But it's hard to make a deep playoff run when this is such a glaring issue. And, it's not just a bad issue. They're pushing, bottom 100 teams in the entire country in terms of free throw percentage. So it's just something that's got to be improved as the season goes on.
All right, let's talk about the defense. As we look at the numbers here, we mentioned that, Duke scored 46 points offensively in the first half. Well, guess what? They gave up 46 points defensively in the second half. Christian Anderson was the guard we talked about a lot going into the matchup. Thanks again to our guys over at Locked On Texas Tech for giving us a crossover episode Friday going into the game. But they talked about how much of their offense kind of centered around Christian Anderson, and Duke did a really good job making him uncomfortable in the first half, only scoring 4 points. But in that second half, he took over. He played all 40 minutes. Duke didn't have an answer for him, but the other guys were stepping up for Texas Tech as well. And then on the glass, I thought Texas Tech did a really nice job in that second half, rebounding and getting themselves second possessions.
Yeah, Christian Anderson and J.T. Toppin might be the most productive duo in the entire country. They combined for about half of Texas Tech points on average, and Duke did a fine job against Toppin for the entire game relative to how productive Toppin is. I mean, 19 points and 10 rebounds. I think you'd honestly take that. But Christian Anderson was just phenomenal in that second half, going for 27 along with 5 assists, killed Duke in the pick and roll all second half long. Duke had no answer for it. His ability to create and knock down tough shots down the stretch was so impressive. And it got, I don't think Duke played bad defense a lot of the time. It was just fantastic shot making by Christian Anderson, and good offense always beats good defense. So, I mean, those things are going to happen. But again, there's things Duke can do to, relay that and make that effect less than what it could possibly be. And that starts with knocking down free throws when you're sent to the line. In terms of the glass, I thought Duke was just out hustled. Texas Tech was more aggressive in that second half. And when they started to get their side of the crowd going, I thought, it startled Duke. And I thought the aggressiveness, it was just higher than that of Duke's, which I don't think we've seen all season. But, in terms of Christian Anderson and J.T. Toppin's performance, it felt like the magic number was to keep those two combined for under 40 points. They combined for 46 points. And a lot of that was in the second half with Anderson. He was fantastic. I don't think Duke, necessarily played bad defense. The pick and roll game killed him, but, just a phenomenal outing from both.
Hugh, 2 players fouled out. It was, and J.T. Toppin's play there with 4 fouls. Like it's just wow, and it was gut wrenching knowing that if you're going to the free throw line, it's not even a guarantee that you're going to be able to make it, right? And again, we go back to yes, Duke has been tested this season, and a loss was bound to happen at some point. But there are just, as you look at this box score, so many things frustrating, knowing the position that Duke was in, well on their way to, closing out this portion of non-conference play undefeated going into the holidays.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't stress it enough. Duke had absolutely no business losing this game. They went into the halftime locker room with a 10-point lead. In the second half, they let Texas Tech shoot 62%. They were 3 of 13 from the three-point line and still had no business losing the game if those free throws got knocked down. If Duke shoots 80% as a team from the line, makes maybe 4 or 5 more free throws, Duke wins that game by 8-9 points, and that late comeback never happens. And again, obviously it's going to happen, especially with such a young team. Sure, it was a Duke favorite arena. But when you're punching the teeth like that, that's going to happen sometimes, and it's completely okay. But when you control your own destiny in a game like that and it doesn't go your way, those are the most frustrating losses to, take down. And I think heading into a 10-day break like this is the kind of loss that can be really, really, really good for the Duke team as a whole. You got 10 days to sit on it. It's not like you can bounce right back for a win. They've got Georgia Tech next, who is a bottom of the barrel ACC team. But it was a reminiscent, like we talked about earlier, of that Final Four collapse. It didn't feel possible that Duke was going to lose that game. Like nothing else really could have gone their way if Duke asked for it. And there's a lot of positives you can take away from that loss too. That Isaiah Evans was a non-factor, and neither was Pat Gungba, and they still put up 81 points as a team and should have won the game. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, but no business losing that whatsoever. Thank
you for that. We need a little bit. I'm typically the one that supplies that, so I'll work to do that a little bit here. Just one of those games that definitely didn't feel like we'd be in the spot, because already this season there have been a couple chances for guys to step up in crunch time, and they do it. Caleb Foster's done it, Isaiah's done it, Cam's done it. Just didn't happen in this Texas Tech game for Duke for whatever reason. So 1 loss on the year, and now Duke's got a long layoff until the Blue Devils are back in action when they take on Georgia Tech to open up ACC play coming up on December 31st, final day of 2025. All right, We'll step aside for our final timeout here on the show and then talk a little bit about this upcoming break for Duke and a few more of the other thoughts in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. What a slate of football games we had yesterday. And how about those in-state Carolina Panthers? Big win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, still controlling their destiny as the Panthers are trying to win that NFC South division. You can see division odds, updated game spreads, and so much more when you go and use FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the action of this NFL season as it goes down to the wire, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you, as FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Hugh Straine's hanging out with us here. We're talking about Duke basketball as they get set for their next game against Georgia Tech on December 31st to open up ACC play. What I want to talk about here is let's talk about the wing spot for Duke. We've talked about Isaiah Evans and not touching the basketball as much in this, or not shooting it as much in his 30 minutes of action. But recently it's been an up and down season thus far for both Nik Khamenia and Dame Sarr. And I actually want to put Darren Harris into this conversation as well, Hugh, because DH's minutes have gone up recently, and he's starting to make the most of it here. So what exactly is the state of the wings for Duke basketball?
Yeah, I mean, still this early on, I think Jon Scheyer is still trying to find those consistent shooters that can be relied on to make shots at any given time. We've seen a ton of different lineups thrown out there. Nik Khamenia, it sort of felt like he was starting to establish himself as that starting three going forward. I'm not sure that's the case anymore. He's been a little consistent, but had a nice spark with 5 quick points early to give Duke kind of a boost after going down there. Dame Sarr, it's just you're waiting for the consistency. The defensive tenacity is there. He's probably Duke's best perimeter defender, but he's just been very inconsistent from the three-point line. And for Darren Harris, he was waiting for the volume. I thought last night he looked as confident as a shooter as I've seen him so far this season. I think just getting him more attempts. I think he's got the best shooting form on this team. He's got the quickest release. I think he has all the tools to be an elite shooter on this team in the perfect 3-and-D wing because he's also a really good defender. But I still think Duke's very far from finding out who that consistent three-man is going to be. Due to the length, I think Khamenia will start going forward from here on out because you could start Darren Harris at the three, but gives up some length. And I think Khamenia's a little further on than Dame Sarr. But, all three guys are elite defenders. I think those are the three that they're kind of splitting the same position with each other. They share the floor a lot of the time, but they're very similar players in my opinion. But just finding out who can make shots on a consistent basis. Over the last couple of games, it's been Khamenia for the most part. Still waiting to see it from Dame Sarr on the offensive side of the ball, and then just waiting for the volume from Darren Harris. So I think still a lot to figure out, and Shires and his staff are far away from establishing that.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, look, Scheyer keeps talking about trying to figure out a closing five and beyond starting. Like, who's this unit that I want to go to in the clutch to close things out? And it was different once again here. When you look at the totality of this Texas Tech game, Dame Sarr only plays 9 minutes. He had 4 fouls. He's in, when he was making shots on the offensive end of the floor, you'd like to have him out there a little bit longer. But, if you're in foul trouble, that does you no good. Nik Khamenia only played 18 minutes. He didn't even play a full half of basketball, 15 for Darren Harris. So there you go. You look in the closing moments, Hugh, and it's actually the two bigs, Isaiah Evans, and then that backcourt of Caleb Foster and Caden Boozer together. So now there's another wrinkle here where maybe this is a group of 5 that you want to see get an extended run, and it involves none of the wings that we're trying to highlight here with Sarr, Khamenia, and Harris.
Yeah, it's trying to figure out right then Scheyer was sacrificing length for offense, which is, in that stretch situation where you need points, that was probably the right call. But coming out party for Caden Boozer last night against Texas Tech was averaging 2.6 points per game on around 33% shooting from the field. In Duke's first 5 high major matchups, also played only around 13 minutes a night. Went for 13 points in 19 minutes against Texas Tech. Thought he provided a great spark off the bench in the second half on both sides of the ball. But there's a lot of different ways that Jon Scheyer can kind of mix and match this rotation. And, you pick and choose what factors you're going to give up and, what you're going what you're going to put in. He sort of rode the hot hand, I thought, with Caden Boozer in as a closer, and also sacrificed a lot of length in the backcourt, which when you're in a deficit, that's something you probably have to live with. But that's one of the things that this gauntlet of a non-conference slate we were scheduling against elite teams, that's one of the big reasons that this is so important, because you figure out who those guys are going to be with the ball in their hands late, who's going to provide you with that spark late in that second half when you're down, when you're up, who's going to take care of the basketball. And Caden Boozer was just that guy. I think last night, I think Jon Scheyer was riding the hot hand. And, it's probably going to be a game-to-game thing is what is Jon Scheyer willing to give up? Is he willing to give up a little bit of shooting, a little bit of cold offense for the sake of defensive length? And I think just based on the opponent, based on the score, based on how the game's been going, that's probably going to change as the season goes on, because with how diversely skilled, I guess, if you will, this Duke team is, I don't think you need a true closing five. I think it's going to switch as the season goes on, especially with so many freshmen.
All right, so we'll see how it goes as, again, Duke goes into the holiday break. Players get an opportunity to be with family for the holidays and then come back and get set for the start of ACC play. Georgia Tech at home on New Year's Eve, and then that Saturday, January 2nd, Duke plays at Florida State before a big Tuesday showdown against Louisville. That's three kind of quick games that you're going at in ACC play to see how Duke can bounce back from this first loss of the season. Before that happens, though, on the 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern time, the world is set to hear from Deron Rippey Jr., the five-star point guard who will make his college decision. And Hugh, notably, an update here, he was in Madison Square Garden with his family and taking in this Duke basketball game against Texas Tech.
Yeah, Rippey, the New Jersey native out of Blair Academy, was in attendance last night, was also in attendance at Duke's other game at Madison Square Garden against Kansas early in the year. Saw the win against Kansas, obviously saw a loss, a really, really ugly loss last night against Texas Tech. But a lot of recent news is starting to seem to pull Rippey towards Duke. He recently picked up a crystal ball prediction to land in Durham, has really been having an amazing senior season, recently put together 28-point performance against the Newman School in Massachusetts with 6 made threes in that ball game. He's deciding between Duke, Tennessee, Miami, Texas, and NC State. Felt like early on after he announced that Final Five that NC State was the favorite, at least from what I was seeing. I think Duke is overtaking that spot. Duke now the favorite to land Rippey and Jordan Smith Jr., so 2 potential 5-star guards on their way to Durham next season.
Be an unbelievable class that you'd be able to put together if you're Jon Scheyer. So that'd be some good news, certainly, to see what next season looks like with the Duke team in particular. You've got it all covered over at Ball Durham. Tell us how people can support you, Hugh.
Yeah, I'm the site expert over at Ball Durham, powered by Fansided. That's BALDURHAM.com. Got everything you guys need: Duke basketball, football, recruiting updates, guys in the pros. Come check us out for new content every day. Always enjoy being on the pod and always support the shout out, JJ.
Good to see you, man. We'll do this again soon, okay?
Yep, you too. Have a good one.
All right, that's Hugh Straine joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. As that brings our program today to a close. Man, tough loss for Duke against Texas Tech by 1 single point. The first loss of the season for Duke, and we'll see how they bounce back moving forward. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about the game. And again, we've got more coming your way this week on Locked On Blue Devils. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.